Thank you all for joining me bright and early on this Wednesday morning. I hope you've had a wonderful Reinforce so far. I definitely have been. And I'm excited for what we're here to talk about today. So I'm Rosie. I'm a product manager at Tines. And today I'm going to talk to you about Tines and AWS Security Hub, how they work really well together so that you can manage your security processes at scale. A bit of an agenda. We're going to start with a bit of background on Tines in case you're not familiar. Then we'll talk to Tines and AWS at a high level, how it works with all of AWS's services, really zoom in on Security Hub specifically, and then go into real-world examples of this really good integration and partnership together. If you aren't familiar, Tines is a workflow, automation, and orchestration platform for security and IT teams. In 2018, Owen Hinchy and Thomas Kinsella founded Tines based on their very real pains they were experiencing as security practitioners. Their teams were overwhelmed, overstretched, and overworked. They could not find a tool or a solution in the space that fit their needs and met their pains, and so they left their jobs in security to found and build Tines based on a response to the very real pains they were feeling and that some of you might be feeling today. As you can see here, Tines is a drag and drop, very visually self-documenting orchestration and automation platform built to build, run, and monitor your most important workflows. Build, run, and monitor is actually a really good way to summarize what Tines can do for you. You can build in that UI you saw on the last slide collaboratively with your team to integrate across your entire stack. You can run Tines on-prem or in our cloud solution, and you can see insights into your workflows that are actually running with our security and logging features. And finally, you can monitor the data running through your workflows to see what's happening and take action. And you can do all of that even better with our AI features in Tines. I'm very proud of our AI features. There's a lot of hype in the market, as I'm sure you're aware. These are real, usable, dependable applications of AI. But arguably, what I'm actually more proud of is the security with which we've implemented these AI features. So if you're using AI in Tines, you can be confident that your data is not being used for logging, it's not being tracked, it's not leaving your tenant, it's not traveling on the internet. And we're actually able to do all of this using AWS Bedrock via AWS Private Link. We presented on this last year, so I'd highly recommend checking out that presentation if you're curious to hear more. We have three main features that align with that build, run, monitor framework. So you can use automatic mode as a builder to manipulate data using natural language prompts. Our AI action allows you to invoke an LLM each time your workflow runs. And then finally, Workbench is our biggest release since the workflow platform that I showed in an earlier slide, the original company itself. And that's going to allow you to chat live with an LLM that's connected to your proprietary tools. So you can use Workbench and start taking action in AWS itself. Now that you know a little bit more about Tines, let's actually talk to how Tines and AWS works together. AWS has a lot of services, and Tines is able to connect with and integrate with them very easily, whether it's via an SNS topic, with the API, with the CLI. It's very easy to connect Tines with your AWS services that you're using. You don't have to custom code an integration. You don't have to take months of professional service development to get them connected. It's really important to us that it's easy to integrate the two. But if it's easy to integrate, you have to have a reason to integrate, right? So let's actually talk about why it's helpful to integrate Tines and AWS together. There's a lot going on this slide. We'll get through it together. So we'll start at the top. From a high level, AWS acts as your infrastructure layer. It's where your security, your compute, your storage, your identity services live. And it's built to be resilient and scalable across your whole business. And Tines acts as your smart orchestration layer. So with Tines, you're automating actions, you're coordinating your security and IT workflows, you're reaching out to the right teams with the right information. And together, Tines and AWS is a really powerful partnership because you're able to take signals that AWS is giving you and then act on them intelligently and quickly with Tines. So let's go into the details here. You're going to get sources of information from your AWS services, ingest those into Tines with your workflow automation components, and then those workflows will have real impacts in destination services like your AWS services as well as other tools across your stack. So you might have collection and aggregation sources like CloudTrail or Security Lake. Tines can ingest that data, normalize it for you, and apply triaging or risk mapping to that data. You don't need to write a collector or a parser to do that. If you have more of a detection and alert source, we have a lot of customers using guard duty, for example, or inspector. Tines is able to take those real-time alerts that they're scanning for and alerting you on, and immediately ingest and begin to triage those. And so once that data is into Tines, that's where the workflow automation component gets started. So you can enrich your data with other tools across your stack. Tool stacks are very big nowadays. You likely have AWS services. You have other services outside of AWS. You don't need to be manually task switching and jumping into different services and platforms. Let Tines do that for you and enrich the original alert with other information, maybe a threat intel lookup, or looking up an asset looking up an asset owner in your CMDB. You can also then, once you have an enriched alert, determine what action you want to take. Maybe based on the enrichment, you're fine with auto-remediating that in Tines. That's an option. You can also do an assisted remediation using Workbench or using ticketing with prompts in Tines, where we're waiting for human input and assisting you in making those decisions in remediation. I think it's a really common misconception that automation has no humans in the loop. I really think we need humans in the loop for it to be in any way valuable for your processes. And finally, another key point of workflow automation is communicating to the right people in the right places. So whether it's more of an audibility side of things, where we're creating tickets for you, we're making sure everything's tracked, to maybe spinning up incident channels for you and your team, making sure the right people are all there, calling your on-call engineer, sending Slack or Teams messages, you're able to automate all of that so that your team can focus on what matters and solving the incident or the alert at hand, rather than making sure all of the correct tickets are in order and all of the messages are sent. This is an iterative process, so it's not always a cut and dry, enrich, remediate, and communicate. You're going to be iterating on this over and over again, and with Tines we make it really flexible to do so. And then finally, with your destinations piece, you're able to actually take action and make changes in your AWS services. Maybe that's suspending user access, maybe that's updating an S3 bucket policy. You're able to do all of that as part of your workflow automation, including a human in the loop, or automatically doing it as well. We got through it, I promised we would. So there's a lot that Tines and AWS can do together, and say you're receiving an AWS guard duty alert, you might be enriching that alert and then choosing to auto-remediate it or let your team know. But overall, you're able to make sure, using those raw signals from AWS, that Tines can help you integrate with the rest of your stack and actually start to solve for that alert, the full life cycle of that alert, right? So now that we've talked about AWS and Tines at a high level, let's really zoom in on Security Hub, which is a critical part of this picture. Security Hub is acting as your centralized findings plane. A lot of those services, a lot of those sources we covered on the last slide, Security Hub is taking all into one place. It's able to show you normalized findings from them with priorities and severities associated. And it's a great place for your team to be able to have insight into what's happening in your AWS instance. And so as AWS Security Hub is discovering these findings, it will automatically send them to EventBridge. And this can then trigger workflows in Tines through SNS topics. Detection through AWS Security Hub is an amazing first step. It's giving so much insight and visibility. And then with Tines, you're able to take that next step and really begin to automate and enrich and remediate the entire life cycle of your finding. I I think I've said automate, remediate, and enrich like 10 times at this point, and those are great, but I really like to show real-world examples that are understandable and might be relatable to your processes. So I have some specific individual actions up here that are common that you could take using Tines based on your AWS alerts you might be receiving from Security Hub. Maybe you're ingesting an alert about an S3 bucket policy. You might create a ticket for that. Enrich the alert, actually check the current buckets policy, see if it's still relevant. And if you're comfortable, maybe Tines automatically applies an access block, reaches out to the user who changed it. You might query CloudTrail logs to get more information about it. If we're thinking about vulnerabilities, we might be enriching that vulnerability, identifying the asset owner, logging a ticket, waiting on the asset owner's input, and assisting in a remediation as well. Or we can automate and spin up incident channels, right? We can alert teams via Slack or Teams, prompt and escalate for updates if you need executive reporting, and overall make sure that everyone's in the right place with the right information in the tools they already work with. Those were individual actions. We also have some real-world examples as well. We have case studies with all of these customers, so these are just kind of small summaries of what they can do, but you can check out the case studies as well. Path AI was originally onboarding all of their users using a YAML script that they maintained in Python. They were able to instead build a Tines workflow that checks for their active users. Once they've started and they're active, assigns them to a squad that has IAM group mappings, and then automatically adds those users to your IAM groups, creates a ticket. It's amazing auditability. When your auditors come and ask for the access reviews and the access tickets, you have all of it right there, and it's a repeatable process. It's saving their team 45 minutes per onboarding now. If we look at Turo, we're thinking vulnerability management. They were manually creating all of their tickets, manually identifying the asset owner. Now that we have Tines and AWS working together, we're able to automate that ticket creation, saving their team a lot of time, and making sure that their asset owners are being routed the right tickets. And finally, if we look at Canva, they were able to automate their escalation and response processes. They were receiving guard duty alerts and needing an initial triage to make sure that their team was really focusing on the right alerts, the most severe and critical alerts first. And so Tines was able to do an immediate enrichment upon ingestion of that alert in real time so that their team is focusing on what really matters. We've talked a lot about how Tines and AWS connect, work together technically, actions you can take, but I'd really like to finish and summarize with why they're better together. We've talked on integration. It's really important to make sure that you can connect to all the tools in your stack. If it's taking a year to connect to one specific tool like your ticketing service, you're not going to be able to build really good automations. Your team isn't going to be able to respond as effectively. So effortless integration with all of your AWS services and beyond is really valuable for your team and for scaling your security responses. On the proactive side of things, with really amazing insights from Security Hub, you're going to be able to proactively threat hunt and identify risks before they turn into real incidents using Tines and AWS. So automating and enriching that entire life cycle there. And when you do get alerts, you're able to triage, respond, enrich using Tines and AWS really effectively with your team. This is a massive part for scaling and operationalizing security processes. These are all great, but I think the most important really is efficient, effective teams. We're able to reduce burnout and let teams focus on what matters. Ideally, even joyfully build some of these automations as well so that everyone's aware of the processes, and more importantly, focusing on really what matters and what's most important, rather than doing a lot of what we call muck work, a lot of the back-end plumbing, a lot of the ticket creation, a lot of the manual work. So Tines and AWS work very well together, but I think more so the benefit is really for your teams and for everyone using that integration together. Amazing. I hope this was informative. Thank you all so much. My email's on the board as well if you have any questions.